So this year has brought for me personally my practice an increasing interest in looking over my life and making peace with a lot of things that happen. I think part of it was all the BBCs that I did this summer regarding aging and how I've identified with my body, so much a part of my identity, and now that it's just not working like it used to, uh, to to reconcile that and to make peace with that. And so aging has been a huge piece on me looking at my life. I kind of feel sometimes that I've been serpentining and switchbacking up this beautiful mountain of life, and I've kind of gone over the back end, and kind of switchbacking on the back end. And then also, too, is that after Jane died 4.5 years ago, I remember doing these BBCs regarding that experience of being with her and her death. And I shared a very strong determination that I would use her death to deepen my practice of the three principal aspects of the path, to fuel it, to help my, give up this cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and the bodhicitta fueling that. And also because I was so identified with her as my sister, this solid, concrete, reified self, to really help use her death to sort of loosen my grip on how people appear to me as inherently existent. And that so much of um, I don't want my death to have the same level of angst and mental pain as hers did. She lived an extraordinary life. She was an extraordinary person, one of the most amazing mentors of families, women, young adults that I've ever met. But she struggled a lot with self-doubt. She struggled a lot with attachment to her family, anxiety, and angst, and some struggles that I have personally recognized as some of my own. And with no real tool to work with them, I mean, she was peripherally, she knew the Abbey, she'd been here, she had done some practices, but she didn't have the tools that I have to work with my mind. So it becomes apparent that I have had the more fortunate opportunities than she did. And that I think that the Dharma and its constant reminder that death is certain and the time of death is uncertain has also increased this interest to settle the things internally of my past. And even though so much of that life is a non existent, it doesn't even exist anymore, more and more this year, memories have been coming up that have been showing me, the things that I really want to rejoice in my life and the things that I need to purify, like lots of things I need to purify. And so this year, I don't know what's happening, but there are people telling stories. I hear something, I smell something, and it triggers a memory of something that happened in my life. Sometimes in the hall, I'm in the middle of doing my practice, and somebody's face will emerge in my memory and with very strong feelings. And so at times I'll just put them aside, but there's been a stirring of my life journey, and I really want to utilize that to continue to use it for purification, for my rejoicing. And then just this past 2 weeks ago, I got this call out of the blue from somebody who was a very, very dear friend, like 20, 25 years ago. She called out of the blue. She's in hospice, and she called just to say how much she loved me and how much she appreciated my presence in her life. And so, as a result of that, all these memories came pouring out as far as my relationship to her, actions that I had done, things that I had said, what had been helpful in my relationship to her and what was not helpful. And her voice, was once again an invitation to make sure that I take care of any karmic business I have with these dear people in my life that are no longer there, but now she's back in it in a kind of an interesting way. And so as I look at my life, I find myself rejoicing that however I acted in this life, and sometimes just stupid and foolish and reckless, so far it has not proved to be an obstacle for me to meet this precious Dharma. That it didn't provide or set up any type of obstacles for me to meet my precious teachers. And that it is a perspective that has helped me to make some peace with my life and to rejoice. And that even some decisions that I made this life were maybe perhaps some cooperative conditions to make this rare, extraordinary life that I have here at the Abbey. Really, just so precious, just seeing the preciousness of this life right now. And that as part of making peace and settling things, it's become very, very clear that seeing the places in my life that I could have very easily have been detoured badly and would have never met the Dharma. I think that being a seeker, I mean, I come from a family that I have one of my twin brother's not a seeker at all. He's quite happy with life as it is. Jane was a seeker in her own regard. But to be a seeker, to have that kind of mind that is so powerful, it's a place in your mind that from past karma, you come into this life and there's something you yearn for, something that is not apparent but drives you in the way in which you engage your life, where you go, the people you meet, how you respond to things. And you do all sorts of things that have to do with this place, this deeper place inside, but you don't know what it is. And of course, it can be a powerful mind, and I really have come to realize this life that I've had that very much. Even as a child, I was a seeker. But it can also be a problem, because just because you're a seeker doesn't mean you have any wisdom. So in your searches, you can be bamboozled, you can be deceived by all kinds of people and wrong views that are enticing that we fall for. And so looking back over my life in this effort of purifying and rejoicing, I've seen those places where I could have very easily have detoured the seeker, this yearner of truth, this yearner of something more than the happiness of this life, got bamboozled a few times, but luckily didn't end up, falling into the rabbit hole. I have to bow to the good karma of whoever I was in past lives that kept me moving. So even though I ran into these situations that were enticing, they were spiritual little kernels, these little delicious little pieces of spiritual food, I kept saying, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. I was disappointed. I was discouraged, but I kept seeking. There was this tenacity about there's something I'm looking for. I don't know what it is, but this is not it. And of course, not back then, not having any concept of karma. So everything that happened to me was from a perspective of thinking that I was in charge, that I was making these very intentional decisions, when in fact it was totally being run by the 8 worldly concerns. So there was no understanding whatsoever how limiting life was, because I was looking through that lens. That as a spiritual seeker, it has to be more than just the happiness of this life, even as a thought. And so the restlessness that I experienced was the part that knew some part in my mind from past karma that the happiness of this life was not it. And it became quite a conundrum, because most of the spiritual journey that I had, it was drugs, sex, goddess practice, Course in Miracles, crystals, healing circles, affirmations, theosophy, that as a seeker, I knew that there was something missing. Always came around to just the happiness of this life, and usually only benefiting me. There was sometimes some altruism in those spiritual, journeys, but it always came back around. Well, what's good for me? What's going to make me happy? What's going to make it? What's going to do it for me? And then, of course, as Lama Zopa says, I came up continually with, and then, is that all this is? And so that was just this driving mechanism in my life. And I know that a number of us elders here in the community have said it's quite amazing that some of us didn't die in our lives searching for the happiness of this life. I mean, reckless, foolhardy, doing all these things to try to find what is this happiness? What is this deep fulfillment that we're looking for? And so luckily, when I look at my life and I see, all that happened, all unfolded, not as isolated parts and blocks of time, but as a continuum that built this weaving for me, that everything in my life mattered, even the detours, for what's happening now and what's going to be happening in my future lives. And that there are events in my life that I'm continually purifying, because I was so darn intentionally self-serving. I was so insensitive to the impact that I had on others. So much of my life is still the 35 Buddhas every day. I'm still purifying, still purifying. And this summer, all these memories are coming up of faces I have not thought about for 50 years are coming up, and my relationships to them. That out of deep ignorance, not knowing the functioning of karma, I acted like there were no ramifications. So in this seeking, what I would do for myself and for others is, there's a lot of things I have a lot of regret about. And so to this day, purification is a huge part of my practice. And what I try to bring into my life, particularly from the time that Jane died onward, is what am I about to do, serving my bodhicitta or not? Is it directed by my ethical conduct or not? Is this action of body, speech, or mind helping me to free myself from samsara or to perpetuate it? So a lot of this has been coming up for me just in my face this year. And because of that commitment I made, I think 4.5 years ago, I set that motivation very deeply because of my love for her and to see the pain and the struggle she had in life and to know that I wanted to be able to use that. I also have become very, very more and more cognitive of the kindness of my parents, even more, how they overcame the struggles of their own conditioning and their own karma. I am forever grateful to see the incredible amount of emotional, mental, and physical pain they themselves had because of what their karma was bringing, what their conditioning was bringing, and that they still ended up raising, despite that, raising 3 extremely good people. Extremely good people. So I will continue to use Jane's death and my life for years to come to help me see the beauty and the opportunity of this beautiful life that I've had. And to reconcile and make peace with all the pain that happened, and to dedicate whatever wisdom and clarity that I've developed from this journey to my awakening, not just for myself, but for those who I've met in this life, those that I will meet in my future lives, and those that I've met in my past life. So this year is, for whatever reason, I'm accepting it wholeheartedly. It is kind of a watershed year as I'm moving into my 68th year on this planet, and that I really am looking forward to what else is going to come up, what else is going to emerge that really brings a clarity, a reconciliation, a forgiveness and acceptance, and a deep amount of joy. For despite all the difficulties, the suffering, it has brought me to this place with this community, with these teachers, and with this rare opportunity. And I want to be able to create the cause and conditions for future lives to have this for not only myself, but for everyone that has ever contributed to my well-being.